Hello,
Hello.
everybody.
Hello.
I'm Belle. I use she, they pronouns.
I'm Maeve. I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Xavier. I use they, them pronouns.
And I'm AJ, and I use she, her pronouns, and we are very impactful people. VIP.
We are.
And this week we're going to be talking about the film Out of the Past. It's a noir from 1947, focusing on the quiet life of a small town gas station owner named Jeff Bailey slash Markham. He's going by both, is interrupted when a figure from his shady past, a small-time crook named Joe Stefanos, recognizes him at the gas station. Stefanos' boss, a crooked gambler named Whit Sterling, had hired Jeff to track down his lover, Cathy Moffat, a girlfriend who shot Whit and made off with $40,000 of his money. Jeff and Cathy fall in love as Jeff, the private detective, is looking for her, but she left him to go back to Sterling, who now wants Jeff to settle a few of his old scores.
Yep. So Jeff Markham Bailey is played by Robert Mitchum, and he plays the classic noir protagonist who he's not the innocent one. He obviously has done some shady stuff as a PI before and double-crossed Whit. Even though Whit was a bad guy, he still double-crossed him. And then Cathy Moffat, played by Jane Greer, a lovely femme fatale who switches, as Jeff says, switches sides quite frequently and really doesn't ever know where her loyalties lie. And Kirk Douglas, who plays Whit Sterling, the boss, who is just sort of pulling everyone's strings and just knows what he wants and gets what he wants. And if he doesn't get what he wants, then you're in deep trouble. And not throughout the film, during the film, all the actors expertly use so-called hard-boiled dialogue to an amazing extent.
Yeah, and hard-boiled dialogue is really categorized as super cynical, straight to the point, no beating around the bush, super like tough guy. Dialogue that often like really uses a lot of idioms and like super weird phrases and words that we're going to break down for you. And it's like not so much always like an insult as it is like an I don't care and I don't care about you and I'm not going to have this conversation anymore. So I'm going to say something really rude, but you're not going to call me rude for it. So
like
it really like
coolness, essentially.
yeah, and it really builds up the protagonist and like gives him this like air of like bravado. So
Yeah. So to start things off, we have a quote from the beginning of the film where Joe is in Marnie's diner / cafe, and he's just casually overhearing a conversation that is sort of relevant to what he's trying to find out because he's looking for Jeff Bailey. And so Marnie says to another customer, "Two things I can smell inside 100 feet, burning hamburger and a romance." I don't know why I said that in a voice, but it just felt like I had to do it.
it's necessary.
It was necessary. Yeah, so you kind of have this sort of weird mash of like two different things coming together. Like you've got a burning hamburger, which is kind of like a gross, nasty thing that you probably don't want to smell. And then you've got, she's also talking about like a romance. So the gossip, and she's bringing those two things together, which I think was a nice kind of early piece of hard-boiled jargon, if you will, towards the beginning of the film.
Yeah, I think it's like a little bit of, like, and it's associating the connotation of like something gross and like something going wrong with this like budding romance that's going on between Jeff and Anne, which is like a little bit of an illicit piece of gossip. And so it kind of like sets up this like, oh, here we go. Like she's got her like trouble meter going and this is making it go off. Another piece of dialogue that we liked was not so much full of the idioms, but very much like we did want to address tone of some of these pieces of dialogue, because it's like very characteristic of the hard-boiled dialogue, this voice that they use, and the kind of rude tone that they use. So that's not really what we're going to touch on overall, but we wanted to bring it up, so I'll do a little impression. So Jeff, when he is seeing Joe for the first time, he goes, "Hello, Joe. I wish it was nicer to see you." It's just like so snappy and quick and like a little bit rude, but like not rude in a personal way, rude in a way where it's like, I don't like you, I'm making it clear, but we're gonna have this conversation, I guess, but I want you to know I'm pretty cold to you right now.
Mhm. And kind of going off of that idea of tone and coldness, not only to other people, but like to the person speaking, the line itself. Like this one here, our friend Markham lived in New York, and he worked with a sort of stupid, oily gent by the name of Jack Fisher. Jack Fisher being Jeff Bailey's partner. And Jeff is saying this about himself, associating him with who we could suppose at the time being a suspicious, like, greaseball of a man. Like, just like pretty suspicious PI kind of character. But then also like he's associating himself with the greaseball, so he's almost like self-deprecating his own connections with people, being like, hey, I don't like that guy Jack Fisher, but I don't like me either, because me is associated with Jack Fisher.
Totally. And he's like, I think the word oily, and just like the way that like oily gent sounds, like they chose the word gent, like short for gentleman, right? Like they're like saying like, oh, this gentleman, but then they're like degrading him and saying he's like, oh, but he's like an oil slick, like he's like thick with like all this bad stuff just completely covered in it. So it's like they're calling him a gent, like a gentleman, but they're saying like he is the opposite. Of like
balance of like, well, we don't want to be too mean to him, so we called him stupid a second ago, might as well call him a gent. Like
like insult his intelligence and then say he's like really like slippery and probably really untrustworthy, and like those sort of things don't usually go with gentlemen. Or gent.
He only deserves gent. He doesn't deserve old man.
Yes,
that's
he's
true.
not gentle or a gentleman, but they're using like, I don't know, they're referring to, it's like another little slang term that I just think it's interesting that they would choose that word for man.
Right.
Yeah, I like that it's also stupid and oily, because sometimes oily, it's kind of like you could be like an eel and like you kind of like slide out of situations, but at the same time he's stupid. And a gent all at the same time.
He's not like the clever sort of slippery,
no, he's not a grifter.
Like he just is like messy and stupid. Like in like the simplest of terms, you know. So yeah, then we start to get into like a sort of interesting part of the film where Bailey is now telling his like new love interest the reason for all of his secrecy. And so we start to get into some flashbacks, and that quote about our friend Markham was kind of the beginning of his story to Anne. And so in this part of the film that I'm about to talk about, so Fisher, Jeff, Whit, and Joe are all discussing how Cathy shot Whit 4 times and didn't kill him. And so they say, a dame with a rod is like a guy with a knitting needle. And there's a lot to unpack there. But first of all, I think it's just super cynical, because they're basically implying that she's useless because she didn't murder him. So like, oh, God damn it, these women never good at their jobs, like killing our, colleague, essentially. And like, they're saying that to his face, like, oh yeah, I kind of wish she killed you because then like a woman would be good for something. But yeah, there's
she's not.
yeah, she's just useless.
Which was the
Um,
stepping stone of noir of, okay, we'll give you a complex female character, but she has to be the villain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she can't be smart and good.
Yes, it has to be just
Ever.
one or the other.
All intelligent women are devious and evil.
Yeah.
And bad with a rod.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Which is another slang term for gun.
Yes. So dame is obviously for a woman, and a rod is one of many slang terms that we have found that mean gun. And then also just like it's very, very thick with toxic masculinity all over. Like a guy with a knitting needle is also useless, I guess.
Absolutely. Can never, a man has never sewed before, ever.
Like,
Ever for
and
any
is
reason.
physically incapable of doing it.
Yeah.
That's a woman's job. Our job is to shoot.
Yeah. So like on top of just flat out saying like, oh, I kind of wish she killed you. They're also just layering all these like just piling on the toxic masculinity and the sexism and the expectations for men versus women.
Which is just how they're constantly trying to be the toughest, most, but at the same time, nonchalant. Like, that's what wit is. Like when he's talking to Jeff about the job and Jeff says, I lost her. I think I'm going to go home now. And Wit just says to him, you're wrong. I fire people, but no one quits on me. You started this and you'll end it. Which, coming from Wit, I mean, his tone of voice is pretty casual and nonchalant. But the words and the reputation of Wit says, you don't have a choice in this. You're going to find her if it's the last thing you do. Like you can't get out of this job. You accepted it. You're going to finish it. No matter.
You're kind of going to end it one way or another. And it's like very implied. That's like, if you don't do what I want, you're going to end.
Yeah.
Like, your life is going to end because like in one way or another, this is getting finished.
And no matter what he ever does, he's always going to be looking behind his back to see if Wit is coming after him, which eventually he does. So it's basically Wit is saying, unless you finish this, you're never going to be a free man.
Yeah.
You're going to be, you have to change it, which he does. He has to change his name. He has to completely go underground. And still, I don't think that he was in hiding for that long. It didn't take him that long to find him. So
yeah, didn't it say he had been there for like 3 years?
Yeah, not long enough for anyone to age, but long enough for him to get a little comfortable, and then all of a sudden, boom! Hey, by the way, go steal 40,000. Go steal those tax returns for me, so that I can keep my $1 million from the government.
Oh, God. Yeah, and I think it. But yeah.
So this kind of leads in a little bit to, this is still in part of the flashback when Jeff is talking to Wit, I think still in the office. And he says, I know how you trust people, about as far as you could throw Stefano, which is, first, there's a little idiom in there, like about as far as you could throw something like a rock or whatever. And then being as it is Stefano, who's like a whole person, you're not going to be able to throw that very far. So Wit's trust does not go particularly deep. Although he does seem to maybe trust the wrong people, because he's continually trusting Jeff to do these things. And he says stuff like, oh, I trust you, Jeff. And you're like, you're a good guy. But then at the same time, it doesn't really work out the way that Wit expects it to, and Jeff ends up kind of falling for the woman instead of really doing his job.
Yeah, I think like a lot of the way that Jeff and Wit communicate with each other is just like super like, we're gonna say we have this sort of relationship, but what's really going on is we're both trying to manipulate each other.
Yeah.
So like
that's what's under the surface.
Yeah. Whit is saying like, oh, you're the only guy for the job. You're the only one who could do this because I trust you. But really he's saying, I can control you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he's constantly setting him up, as you find out later.
Yeah.
Jeff was the fall guy who was gonna murder this guy over a bad martini for some reason.
Yeah.
Always pulling the strings.
Totally.
Staying one step ahead. And but Jeff still is pretty smart in sort of playing dumb a little bit. Like in that later when he says I'm playing dumb, that's what smart people do. But here he's trying to sort of weasel his way out of it a little bit by framing himself as just the everyman when he says, like, I sell gasoline and make a small profit. With that, I buy groceries. Grocer makes small profit. We call it earn and live. You may have heard of it somewhere. And just in the middle of a conversation, just goes on a quick rant about how capitalism works. Just kind of out of nowhere. And it also, it is sort of playing into, I'm just the everyman now, but it does relate to the cynicism and the, I don't know, realness of noir, because the American dream is what typical Hollywood would be selling. And this is just selling, this is what life is. It's humdrum, it's rambling, it's sort of meaningless. This is what's going to happen. And we're all going to just go about our daily lives. No moving up. This is just what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And that's how I'm going to do it. So very cynical, very just downtrodden, accepting fate. This is the hand I've been dealt.
And I think it's like a little, I don't know if I would call it ironic, but it's just funny that the two of these people who have led such like colorful lives, like they have very colorful pasts and it's a little bit shady. And so for him to turn around and say like, oh, I'm a good person now. I'm like a normal, fine. I never did any of that. And like, I don't know if you've heard of being a decent person, but I surely have. But like they've both done horrible things. They've both screwed each other over. And so it's just like Jeff playing all of these layers of like deceit right back at Whit and saying like, like on the level, we both know we're both bad people, but I'm going to say, I have the moral high ground because for 3 years I've been pretending to be a good person. And like, I don't know. There's just like a little nudge in there of just insulting his character in general.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And in that same conversation, a quote I really liked was, you liked me because you could use me. You could use me because I was smart. I'm not smart anymore. I run a gas station and I like the view. And so like, again, he's like dumbing himself down to be like pointedly rude because they both know that that's not who he is. And they both know that he is still the same smart person that he was. And so he's just like saying these things that are like blatantly untrue to Whit and like defending himself with them in just like a really silly way to me. And for him to like stick at the end like, and I like the view, like I want to stay where I am, like you can't use me and I'm not this person, but like you kind of totally are.
Just change the subject. I like the view.
I like the view. I'm staying where I am, like you have no power over me. A, that's not true. B, that's not true. Like maybe he's got stuff going on in that small town, but he knew the whole time that his past was following him around. He wasn't just like an innocent person like everybody else who lived in that town. Or else he wouldn't have changed his name.
Yeah, and the entire time Whit's just emphasizing, no, I'm still in charge of you. Like when he basically says out loud that he's a sociopath, like when he's saying my feelings, about 10 years ago, I hid them somewhere and haven't been able to find them since. That's basically what he's saying. He's a sociopath. He's emotionless and he just gets what he wants, money, and someone dies along the way. Someone gets screwed over along the way. Well, whatever. Yeah. It's kind of like when he finds out that Stefano died. It's like, oh, he died? Okay.
I can believe him, really. Just another
Let's
guy.
just pin this whole thing on him then. He's a fall guy now.
Yeah. And yeah, I feel like that one's really funny because he's so feelings are like this really complicated thing, I feel like, to men that are portrayed in these films, right? Like
Oh yeah.
they're always so
Yeah.
either shoving their feelings down or they're completely confused and overpowered by them. And so to take this like kind of a hot topic amongst men who can't deal with vulnerability, like, and then say like, oh, that's just an object. My feelings are a tangible object. And that's how I think of them. So I like threw them in my sock drawer and shoved them in the back and forgot about it. Like you could do with like anything you buy at the store. So I just think it's like, yeah, like super cynical and kind of just toxic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just like,
Yeah, I think there's
my feelings.
yeah.
Yeah, pretty much that easy. I guess.
I think it's even like that a little bit, even with Cathy, because to some degree, I think she's playing with the emotions that men kind of have towards her, and she's trying to sort of manipulate on all fronts to get what she wants, which is ultimately she wants the power, all of the power and all the money possible. So she kind of plays with sort of those emotions of kind of desire, but at the same time she's pretty emotionally cold herself because she's able to do all this manipulation on so many different sides, and she really doesn't feel any shame about that because, you know, since she does have kind of her some, what's the word I'm looking for, agency as a woman in this movie, you know, she has to be bad in some way, and she's bad because she's sort of manipulative and cold at heart, I'd say.
Yeah, like super cold-blooded is exactly how I would describe her. Like, I mean, she is the dame with the rod, you know, more than once.
Yeah.
So like on a very real level, you know, she's like a dangerous character.
Yeah. Slipping.
And I think like the hard-boiled dialogue kind of is there to give the men in the movie a sense of danger and like, oh, these guys are supposed to be, they're cold and they're collected and they're doing all this bad stuff. Meanwhile, Cathy is doing the actual bad stuff, but just kind of like not even really being deceptive about it. Just kind of like, yeah, I'm pretty. Anyways, I'm gonna go do this murder over here or something.
Yeah.
And she doesn't need any of that dialogue at all to give off this like cold demeanor. Meanwhile, the guys do, and you could see them like actively trying to hide their emotions during the film using that language.
There's a lot of exchanges between Cathy and Jeff where she approaches him with like a very emotional appeal and he responds to her with like a piece of hard-boiled dialogue. I just feel like this would be a good place to kind of talk about the distinction between them. And so like at one point, the context is she asks him like, won't you believe me? And he says straight up, baby, I don't care. So I just kind of wanted to throw that in. And like, she's like appealing to his emotions and he's like, don't care about you at all.
Yeah.
Like he's reached that point finally with her. Yeah.
Oh, and also when they do the metaphors, like what was that one when they were talking about the like the monkey thing? I think Xavier, you were the one who brought that up.
Right, yeah, the monkey and the weasel.
Yes.
Yeah. Which they're referencing like a cat and mouse game almost, and, as they're talking about
like the Packers the weasel thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so it's like a cat and mouse, like we're chasing after each other, but a pop goes the weasel, like you're around all over the place and I'm gonna gonna hit you down, because they're talking about Bailey going to San Francisco, and he says something like, Wit says something like, "You get around, huh?" And then Bailey's like the mouse and the weasel, or monkey and the weasel.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, that cat and mouse reference, but then also just like Weasel gives a bit more of a slippery like trait to Bailey as well than just cat and mouse. Cat and mouse just evokes like, okay, yes, we're going on this big chase, like goose chase game. There's no real like clear winner here. To call yourself the Weasel doesn't seem as like neutral to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like does the monkey and the weasel thing go like all around the mulberry bush, the monkey chased the weasel? Is that how it goes?
Yeah.
I think so,
So
yeah.
it's like so it's like using that, but I feel like it's like very interesting to separate the words like monkey and weasel out and be like, what are the connotations for that? Because they like obviously chose that idiom for a reason.
Right.
Like, that was something that people said, but like they chose that and not cat and mouse because of like, I guess in that song it's like a very repetitive around and around with like really no point to it, where like a cat and mouse is like a back and a forth, a fight, and a clear predator prey thing.
Right.
Monkey and weasel, not predator prey.
I know, right? So
if anything, the weasel would be the predator, and
yeah.
But there's the connotation of a monkey is very agile and he can hop around, get into places, but a weasel is kind of slippery and can weasel its way out of any situation. So it's kind of also putting a connotation on the different people who the monkey and the weasel represent, which is much more complex than just cat and mouse, predator, prey.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's like levels to it. Totally.
That's exactly what I was going to say about weasel and like being able to like weasel your way out. I feel like, that was definitely an intentional choice that they made there. And, like monkeys aren't stupid either. So kind of like we've already said, it's not like cat and mouse. And I think that's an important distinction, in that this is more just kind of like a endless run around where, both people are kind of maybe just slightly escaping each other, or like one is slightly ahead of the other. So there isn't like, a clear winner. It's just kind of this endless, weird sort of fight thing. And another quote that was from the movie, obviously, is so when Jeff is talking to Cathy and, Cathy's trying to make an emotional appeal to him, about kind of why she went back to Wit and abandoned him. He says, "You're like a leaf that blows from one gutter to another," which kind of is suggesting that, Cathy is kind of, first of all, at like the gutter level. So she's like a piece of trash that's like drifting across the street, like a plastic bag or something. And it's just, she's going from like one kind of bad situation to another bad situation, and she's playing these two people off of each other, and her loyalties are constantly changing depending on how the situation is going with whoever she's hanging out with at that time. And when she decides that this isn't like doing enough for me, she goes back to the other person and then tells that person everything that she's been doing.
Yeah, totally. I think that's just like one of the meanest things that he says to her. It's just like, you are literally nothing but a dead leaf that has been rejected by a tree. It's fallen off the tree. It's landed in the most unwanted place possible, time and time again. And you just keep landing in like this like awful place, and you're discarded every time. Like, it's so weird.
Yeah, she can't get out of the gutter. She's just stuck at that level, and it's not a great place to be.
Yeah.
I think
And
one
then-
other,
yeah.
one other quote that I enjoyed was when Bailey is in that kind of, I think it's like a casino thing upstairs when he goes and he steals the documents that have like the information about that, like basically where they claimed that Cathy had seen him murder Jack. And it was signed by the affidavit. It was signed by her and other people, so that could basically like get him thrown in jail for doing that, even though he did not kill Jack and it was actually Cathy the whole time. But the quote is, "Do you want to talk biz or do you want to play house?" Which that is a nice kind of got a nice ring to it. And that was probably one of my favorite lines of dialogue right there, because you do have that little idiom of like playing house. Are we going to kind of pretend and do this in like the sort of the beating around the bush way, where everybody has like their little roles that they play and we pretend to be nice to each other? Or do you want to get down to business and actually talk about what we're here to talk about?
Yeah.
Stop BSing around. We're not doing that thing, which they've been doing the whole movie.
Yeah.
Of speaking in layers. Like, Wit says that thing about his feelings. Basically, I'm a sociopath. I don't care what you think. Or the thing about the weasel, or I'm going to be a slippery weasel and you're not going to catch me. But now they're just saying, okay, what happened? We're just going to say exactly what happened. Yeah. I was the plant. I was set up to do this. You were that other thing. And just talk straight now.
Yep.
I also think there's like a little bit of like, are you a child? Are you a literal child? Are you a small like female child? Do you want to play house? Like a little bit of like a direct, like, if you don't start talking straight to me, you're a baby.
Yeah.
And like that, of course, that would offend someone's masculinity, So I think there's like a few layers of like the insult and the come on, cut the shit,
Yeah.
Sure. And then in the end, it's just, then it ends pretty cynically. There.
Well, I mean, the last line that we had written down is one of the last lines in the movie, where Jeff's realizing, oh, I'm really in it now. I might not make it out of this one. Where he says what is also the title of the book that the screenplay is based off of. Well, build my gallows high, baby. This is obviously an idiom insinuating he's gonna die rather quickly, hang for his crimes, hang from the gallows, and face the consequences, and face them in a very dramatic manner, which frankly both of them do. The movie ends with a shootout, and then Cathy and Jeff's car smashing into two police cars. So I'd say the gallows were pretty high up there.
And I think like on a literal level, like obviously, like just to explain, like if you're like a foot off the ground and you're being hanged, I guess. It's not you're gonna be dangling there for a while. And so
not very dramatic.
Yeah, so he's just saying like, I'm gonna go out with a bang, die real quick. It's gonna be a little intense. He's like really realizing like the gravity of the situation. Finally.
It's almost like a let's get over with this kind of statement to me.
Yeah,
where
let's jump off.
Yeah, he's been subconsciously expecting it for the whole movie, and now it's finally conscious, where he's like, now we know we had to do this.
Yeah.
I think it's also kind of like since it's about like, build my gallows high, baby, like he's talking to her, that it's kind of like you better make sure that like I die, because if you try to kill me and I don't die, like it's over for you, girl. I'm gonna come for you. Yeah.
Yeah, you got one chance, you better build those gallows high.
Yeah. It better work.
Yeah. you've gotten us into this mess, and like if it doesn't end the way you think it's gonna, like, you know.
Yeah.
Well, that's what noir is, a mess that you get into and it never ends the way that you want it to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Noir in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that quote is like super, just so cynical, idiom filled. I think it's a really good you know, final way
It has
to,
baby in it, which
Yeah.
Baby.
Yeah.
And
Baby.
nihilism? Oh, whoa.
That's baby. And that is noir, and it was a very cynical ending as well. I think we all left depressed,
totally.
but
There
better,
were-
stronger people.
And there were a few laughs in there.
Yes,
Yeah, for sure.
it was definitely
Yeah.
it was
The weird
definitely
fighting.
impactful.
It was
Yes,
so
very
impactful.
impactful film.
Impactful slaps, I'd say.
Yep.
Yeah, they really
Some impactful jargon.
Yeah.
It was an impactful film to us impactful people, and we hope that our
Yes.
impactful discussion has been impactful on you, the viewer.
Yeah. We hope you continue to be impacted by what we've said here today.
throughout your life.
All right. And impacted next week and for many weeks to come.
Yes.
Yes. We'll see you next time. Have a good, impactful life.
Bye.